one of the biggest things that, that in my opinion, in the whole IT industry holds us back and really fails to unleash our potential is clarity. So one of the things that you all can bring to your role is your ability to explain yourself, to explain the system that you're building, to explain what it's for, and the boundaries that you put around it so that you can control projects and control scope, regardless of which technology you happen to bring. So that's one of the skills that I'm looking for in a leader as you progress from an individual contributor into a leadership role.
The level of expertise and the importance of the technology changes. I mean, where my company or our company is today, we change our minds about 5 minutes, every 5 times every minute. I mean, we are discussing a product and it's changing as we've been discussing. And as was mentioned earlier, the communication skills are key. I don't think we have found anything that has been dramatic because somebody wrote a bad line of code or 2 or 3, but definitely we found things that are dramatically wrong because somebody misunderstood what somebody else was saying. So again, where you fall in that spectrum or where you're planning to be or where your career is, I think has a big impact on where you go.
So we do much less actual building of individual and writing individual lines of code, so much more gluing different things together. And it's really a matter of being able to troubleshoot very quickly, being able to have a lot of different kinds of ways that you solve the problem in your tool chest. So I always write web services. Well, what about RSS? Well, what about just old HTTP post? Well, what about just old SQL batch? Because we got this legacy system over here that can only talk about that. So it's being able to have, everybody's always asking me, can't your group just write down the list of rules to architect the next system? And I'm like, well, unfortunately, if I could do that, that'd be great, but we can't because it's like there's this whole pile of experience. So it's gaining experience using different kinds of tools, different kinds of patterns, and understanding how to use them in the best way, when to combine them. It's not just a one or the other sort of approach.
A key skill set, scale, if I can use just one word to describe it. And that goes both ways. Sometimes people talk about, oh, well, your software's good, but it doesn't scale to Google size, Amazon size, Facebook size. And few people's do. There's a reason there's only a few companies at that scale. But there's also the other side of it. I've seen developers and development teams write these incredibly complex systems to do incredibly simple and trivial tasks. And sometimes it's also about, you have to understand where in kind of the scale continuum what you're doing is going to fit and develop the most appropriate solution. As an architect, it's very hard for me to go to our operations staff and say, well, you're going to have to spin up 100 VMs and allocate X number of resources for this really trivial task if I know it can be done with like 2 or 3 small VMs. It's like, well, we over-architected the solution, we over-designed, we overwrote it. So be sure you understand where in the scale continuum what you're doing fits.
I think sometimes software engineers make not the mistake, but they focus a lot on specific technologies and kind of ignore the other stuff, which is kind of the best practices around our industry. So, design patterns are not a technology, right? Unit testing is not a technology. Test-driven development is not a technology. Mock objects are not a technology. They're best practices. They're ideas that a lot of smart people have come up with to make our business easier. So it's important to know WCF, and it's important to know the latest version of Silverlight and all the latest and greatest technologies, but it's also important to keep up with what are the best practices that make you a better software developer.
If I know that you know 13 different languages, I am actually going to be reluctant to hire you for a position that does only one thing. I'm going to be more inclined to bring you into a position where you can work on a team that actually has some exposure to different things. It's a difference between bringing somebody in to work on a simple web service that's clearly defined and the tool set has already been made, and bringing somebody into a core engineering team or an engineering team that's a little bit deeper in the company that actually makes the decisions about how are we going to go about solving an analytics problem to keep track of everything that customers do on the site. What tools do we want to use? In that case, I'm hiring people who have a breadth of skill as well as a depth, but I also hire people out of college with just a little bit of background. I hire people from user groups and from experience based on what they have in their open source portfolio, depending on the job. So, I would say it definitely varies by the position I'm hiring for.